It is 6 o'clock, and unless anybody has any objections, I was going to call the Board of Health meeting for November 18th, 2020 together. And I think that today we have pretty much one item on the agenda, with hearing regarding Tropical Smoothies Corporation and Casey Family Limited Partnership. And that said, how shall we start?
I think what you want to do, Paul Haverty is on the line, but I think the way to proceed is to have Mr. Hausler make his presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, do you agree? Paul's muted. Can you unmute? There you
Sorry,
go.
yeah. I agree. I think that having the applicant make their proposal is the way to proceed.
Okay, Mr. Hausler, would you care to proceed?
Doug? Eric, I can't hear you.
Well,
Can you hear me?
Doug?
Doug?
We can't hear you.
Let me see if I can text him.
He can only unmute himself.
He's not mute. Oh, he just muted himself. Now he's unmuted.
We can't hear.
I wonder if there's a problem with his microphone.
I'm wondering if he doesn't have a microphone, it's broken. So
You probably try log it out and then log him back in. Doug, try log it out and back in.
yeah, either log out, log in, or go to a cell phone, see if that works any better.
Make sure you, oops. You gotta choose, select with, join with audio too, right?
Yeah, computer audio, or he can call in separately.
Donna, do you see him coming back in?
No, I don't see him yet.
Donna is our gatekeeper.
Yeah, but I can see everybody on the right side here.
Right, but they go into a waiting room before
Yeah.
before she admits them.
Just came back.
I can't hear. Nothing at all.
I think he knows that, but I don't know that how we solve it.
You may need to call in.
Yeah, he might need to call in.
Or if anybody has a device, I mean, a cell phone or anything like that.
Donna, did you put the phone number up when you sent out the invite? Is Donna there? Now she's muted.
Does anybody have his phone number and I can call him? He does have.
I don't have his personal phone number, but we have emails from him.
Oh, that's a good point. If I don't have phone on my email on my phone, so if I come off of this, I'll lose all of you.
Don't worry about it. I'm trying to do it here now, but you know me, technology is beyond me at times.
I don't know if he can hear us. The number to call in is 929. Well, first it's 1 929-205-6099.
That backwards?
No, that's right.
Nope, that's
There it
right.
is. Okay. I hear something.
That was probably my phone getting a text.
Okay. Doug, do you want to try the phone number?
I'm in the meeting. Can you hear me?
Yes,
We can hear you, Doug.
we can hear you now.
Okay. Well, thank you. We'll get through the technicalities.
Well, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
I can see
I
him.
can see him.
I can't see him yet.
He's under two different screens, Anne Marie. Yeah, you got the symbol for where.
You have the phone number
also
one,
on
and then
his
there's a
computer.
plain one
Okay.
video.
That's fine. I don't need to see him. Let's get going. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
It's dinner
Well, I
time.
agree with you. I don't want to waste a lot of your time. I think we've made the case for a variance here. The board has the power to grant the variance under the regs that you have. And the primary question that we think was required here is, let's not get hung up on interior, exterior, but let's focus on, is it going to function the way you intend it to function? And I don't think there's any dispute about the fact that this is going to function, not only function exactly the way you'd want it to do. To that end, and I think Dave Silva is on the line from the sewer department, I would ask him to confirm that the sewer department agrees that this system protects the pipe. It does everything from the sewer side that the sewer department would want to do. So from the Board of Health side of things, I just have to show that it's going to meet the same degree of health and environmental protection required under your bylaws or regulations. And that strict application isn't really required here. And that's exactly what we've done. The grease trap that we have does work. We've shown to you, I gave you exhibits A through, I think, L or something like that, identifying each of the specifications, that this one is an indoor-outdoor pump. It just happened to be installed indoor. It more than meets the goals. And then, you know, it's a type of product that is on the approved list of the Commonwealth Plumbing supplies. So it's been reviewed by the state and it's approved by the state. We've shown that the menu that's going to be used here, it has one panini maker, no other fryers, nothing else that's going to generate grease that we're talking about here. I've given you also, you know, how some of this came about, what the hardship's going to be, most importantly of all, and I think Irvi is on the line. You know, she's ready to open. She has employees ready to work. Everybody's there. What we're proposing is not going to present a health problem to anybody here. And that's the problem. I'm concerned about that strict application and making the landlord and the tenant rip up the floor, delay opening for months, and have tens of thousands of dollars in additional cost just doesn't seem right under the circumstances. Now, to add to that, just to be extra safe, we provided a letter from Action King that also said that it is happy to provide monthly service of this account, that it's also going to be available on an emergency basis. We can supply the board with monthly data or more frequent data if it needs, in order that you'll have hard data about what this location generates. And if in fact it generates the minimal amount we think it's going to be, we'll be able to prove that over several months, and then we can revisit this. And if you find that it's somehow not meeting your goals, that's a different question. But we think it's going to more than not just meet it, it's going to exceed it. And based on the menu that's here, we believe that we've hit all the requirements for a variance. So you have the power to grant the variance, and we're just asking you to exercise that power. It's not applicable to every application that comes before you. And we've given the issue of the fact that there was a prior plan of record in the town hall, but the more important piece here is the intent to comply with your goals, and that's what's being done. It could be monitored, it could be accessed, it could be inspected, and it more than it satisfies the requirements, other than it's not physically located outside. And that, to me, I don't know why it needs to. Absolutely get that when you have the power to inspect it at any time you so desire. So unless there are specific questions from the board, I'm not aware that there's any other opposition to it, and there's going to be tremendous hardship to the landlord and the tenant. So I respectfully ask for you to consider the variance on behalf of the landlord and the tenant here. Thank you.
Sue, I'd like to know how we got here. This isn't a new regulation that we wanted in a grease trap. This regulation's been on the books for quite some time. When were they informed that they needed an outside grease trap?
So what happened?
Well-
What happened initially is they were working with Michelle in our department, who is still fairly new to our department as far as opening up restaurants, and she continues to learn all of the regulations. She had not seen the regulation initially in writing when plans initially came through, and this goes back as far as I believe June. And Michelle had
Actually,
several
it's March.
discussions. Okay, so March, even before that.
Doug, can you speak, please?
Michelle had several discussions along the way with the future owner, with their contractor, as far as going over the plans, what the specifics were, what was required. It was, I believe, in June, she had signed off on what she had seen, and then in August, this regulation actually was brought in hand to Michelle. And she came to me and she said, I did not know that this was on the books. It is in fact on the books. How do we proceed? And I said, it is a regulation that we need to go by. We can't just not enforce a regulation. So back in August, there was a site visit made by Michelle, as well as Dawn and Dave, all at the same time, from 3 separate departments within the town, and all 3 departments informed the contractor that they needed an exterior grease trap back in August. And I believe that from there, my understanding is, and Michelle is on this call if we need her, what ended up happening was they looked for some plans, found some plans that the town had over at the sewer department. And on those plans, it did indicate that there was in fact an exterior grease trap in front of this piece of property. So they informed us that they were going by the fact that there was an exterior grease trap on the plan, and their plan was to in fact tie into that exterior grease trap. I am not a general contractor, but I know that you don't wait until the 12th hour to tie into an exterior grease trap. And you don't finish up a complete interior of a building until you tie into an exterior grease trap. So they have a, you know, the inside, from what I understand, is beautiful. They have a beautiful new floor and all this, and they waited until the day they were hoping to get permits signed off to tie into this grease trap to find out that it wasn't in fact there. Where it went over time, over the years, I have no idea. You saw in the packet that there was a speculation letter from Rick Rossell, kind of, you know, guesstimating what may have happened to the exterior grease trap. But I asked around the different departments, nobody really knew.
Would they have needed a permit to take that
They
out?
should have gotten a permit to take it out, but there were no permits on file with any department. So when it was removed, by whom it was removed, nobody seems to know.
What was in this site before this smoothies place?
I do not know.
Doug, what was it before this?
A floral shop.
Classic Flowers?
No.
No.
East Coast.
East Coast. Okay, East Coast. All right, thank you.
So in my discussions, I spoke to Dawn, I spoke to Dave, and I said, how long ago were they informed that they needed to tie into an grease trap? And they each said that they were informed in August. So from there, you know, Michelle and I think the inspectors were just waiting for them to finish up to eventually tie in. In my discussion with Dave, and Dave is on this call, so he can actually speak for himself if you want, but Dave said that the least expensive that they could comply with the regulation and fulfill what the town's ultimate goal is. Because this is not just a sewer regulation, I mean, a Board of Health, it's sewer and Board of Health, is that they could come straight out the front of the building and put an exterior grease trap at the front of the building in the same location where the old one was, and it would be significant, it would be far, far less than the $40,000 that was quoted.
So could I
Can't do it.
clarify one other thing too? So this is Michelle Grant. So we have 3 different regulations. I was listening to Mr. Hauser with the indoor-outdoor regulation. We have 3 different regulations. We have the food code, the Mass Food Code, which requires every food service and every single 3-bay sink to have an indoor grease trap. So we have that regulation. Then we have 2 other regulations. The regulation with the health department requiring an outdoor secondary grease trap outside for 1,000 gallons. And also the sewer department has that same regulation, has more involved in it than ours. But ours, what we do is we sort of ignite this conversation from what my understanding is and make sure that it gets done. So there's 3 different regulations, and it starts with every single food service, every single 3-bay sink has a grease trap, an internal grease trap. The 1,000 gallon tank outside is a secondary, that there are 2 other regulations that require that.
So they have the inside grease trap because they went forward and put that in lieu of the outside one.
Yes, that's what Mr. Hauser was talking
Okay.
about.
So that map,
That's a requirement under the food code.
so that's satisfied.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Anne Marie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years it's been required for the exterior grease trap from Board of Health regulations. Bottom line is that whether it was going into septic, and of course I was on the sewer commission also too, and when the sewer program got put into play and actual construction started, and there was a switchover of connections from septic subsurface to sewer, it was a requirement for them. So this thing has been in from day one to do with the sewer. And day one, from 1980 forward. In fact, it was probably before that. But bottom line, this is not. And the exterior it is an additional thing. It works. Okay. I've been involved with a dozen plus scrutiny things about reviewing about different types of businesses and how they can go through what type of thing and what their menus are and whatever. And the history of the Board of Health, and then also the history of the Sewer Commission and the Sewer Department before the Sewer Commission closed out, was that exterior grease traps were going to be there. It was the protection for the system. It was protection. And also, too, the other issue is, you know, I consider the term grease trap as a kind of a misnomer in the fact that those all types of traps, whether the one inside or the ones outside, are there to separate a lot of different materials, not just grease. But everybody's used the name grease trap from day one, and therefore they continue to use it. But the bottom line is that the two traps in a row, okay, guarantee the town and guarantee the Board of Health that the lines involved going from the buildings, and in some cases like this one and others, where you have multiple different entities flowing through common lines before it actually ends up in the street. And I know it varies depending on the complexes involved, that when something happens to the pipe, it's real clear who's involved, who's put what down the line. And as I said, there's nothing's changed. I've seen these interior grease traps. I've seen the claims over years and years and years and years. And the bottom line is, no, they don't give you the same criteria of protection. And the health department has always had these additional regulations in play. And as I said, they've been in play since 1980 and have not changed. And the Sewer Commission and or the Sewer Department could have made some changes by different people putting their input into it. But they also agreed that we had a new sewer system. We weren't some old existing systems where you had a tremendous amount of history of all different types of facilities tied in with grease traps, without grease traps, with interior, without interior, without exteriors, and on and on and on. We were a brand new system, and we wanted to learn the lessons from all these other communities before us, okay, when we installed this sewer system, that we were going to do it differently, and that we needed to protect it, and that this was the way everything went. And we've had, as I said, we've had plenty of people come in front of us asking inquiries about because of this menu, that menu, whatever, and the answer has been consistently no. This is our local reg and the sewer reg and whatever, and it's stayed in place. And from being involved with this for that many years, we know it works. It's not someone who comes up with a new product and says it. I mean, these other styles of interior grease traps that are small in volumes and whatever compared to the 1,000 gallons. And also, too, there was always one issue of dragging a pump line down through the middle of a food establishment while they're open to pump out some little interior tank kind of thing and whatever. Basically meant that every time you were in there, the inspector had to come back out and do a total inspection of the whole place because someone dragged some filthy pump line down through the place. So I just wanted to give you that background. No respect.
This location for the interior is in the rear door area. It doesn't go through the entire store. So that's just a mistake, I think.
Oh,
so this isn't the way back.
But I'll tell you something. But I will say something too. There's a bunch of different alternatives depending on what we actually got there, and maybe the plumbing inspector knows. Do we have two pipes coming out the front, one pipe coming out the front, one pipe going out the back? I couldn't tell from what was there and whatever.
I can answer that.
We haven't answered
I can
that.
answer that, Richard.
Yeah,
That
go ahead.
the sewer runs from the tropical smoothie to
Yeah,
the hairdresser next door,
yeah,
lies off there and goes out to that grease trap that was, I got a stamped plan from the sewer department that said there was one there. You know, I wasn't around before that, so that wouldn't
Yeah.
work, because that's sewerage that's running through there too. So
well,
we found.
yeah, the issue is the waste streams should be split, correct? And bottom line, we've corrected this a number of different times, and again, don't know the specifics of this place. We corrected it by going directly out from where you say this thing is, directly outside the building, okay, directly outside the building, passed through an exterior grease trap and came right back into the building and tied into the interior line, and everything was perfectly fine. So there was a lot of other solutions that have been out there that were available. As I said, I don't know enough about the specifics of this place, but there's a lot of other alternatives that are nowhere near $40,000 or whatever the number was, that could address this issue, okay, and deal with what, as I said, you know, we basically, and again, I am talking in the past, you know, have had this scenario, have had, you know, hundreds and hundreds of systems and turnover hundreds and hundreds of businesses, and the system that's in place for this and for the sewer things and whatever have been working.
Could I
May-
ask
may I- I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Silver comment?
I'm sorry.
I was going to ask for Mr. Silva to make a comment on behalf of the sewer department who's regulating this in part.
Yeah.
If he can unmute himself.
Dave, where the microphone is, if you can just click on that, it should unmute you.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Are you asking me a question, or you want me to make a comment?
I'd like to know, will this system satisfy the requirements of the sewer department?
I mean, the ultimate goal was to protect the town line. That's for sure. I don't know that we had any type of a minimum gallon requirement in our regulations. So I didn't know that we needed a 1,000 as of yet. That's,
Well, you don't know, well, we've demonstrated, I think, in the materials we gave to the board, that the expected gallons per minute or the flow rate was 34 or 35, and that this machine does something 50. So it exceeds what this is going to generate by
I
at
thought
least a third.
60.
60 then.
I believe this machine is actually 60.
So it's almost double. So
Yeah.
that's my question is, from the sewer department, there's no risk here, is there?
Not if it's pumped out every month.
Especially if it's pumped out every single month.
I mean, if we're going to monitor it every 30 days, I really don't see a problem. If you guys are willing
Thank
to.
you. And I think that will demonstrate what we need to demonstrate to you. There's no harm and no foul here. I mean, we have to be practical. That's the whole purpose of the variance request.
Dave,
Can I speak?
Mr. Silva, this is Anne Marie Rourke. I want to ask you a question because I think Doug was asking you this question. You didn't answer it. Doug is asking whether or not the interior grease trap that has already been installed satisfies the sewer department's regulation. It's a yes or a no.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Eric,
Can I ask a question?
can we let Eric please talk?
Okay.
So I think where I usually come from on these issues in general is that we've held for 40 years every restaurant to a standard. And when we don't often have variances in our regulations, but when we do, my sense has been that it's been more for temporary procedures to, give somebody time to do something, that the fear is that asking to sort of make a judgment for us to understand the volumes, the nature of the machine, that's more the kind of decisions that we make when we're reconsidering the entire regulation. And when we reconsider the nature of a regulation and making a change of that degree, typically that's more than just one hearing. That's a series of public hearings where we're doing a lot of sort of investigation. And it also makes it a bit awkward in that in the middle of a pandemic where our staff doesn't have that kind of timing to do something, my initial read of the situation is that it's a lot more realistic to do something like a 6-month extension to compliance to tie in with an outdoor grease trap rather than rewriting the nature of the regulation. Anne Marie?
Oh, well, I agree with you by virtue of the confusion that was going on here in the beginning. So I'm not really opposed to some sort of a, I don't know whether it's a temporary variance, it's a short-term variance. I guess we'd have to ask Paul what we needed to call it. What does come to mind, though, is that this is a regulation that maybe should be looked at, because maybe there are alternatives to what was written 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But we have what we have in front of us, and that's what we have to deal with. We don't have the time to redo a regulation right now. Our staff is out straight. We're in the middle of flu season. But I don't think it's a bad thing to put on the agenda for when things get better here. And the question is whether or not we want to accommodate this business so that they can at least open. Now, Rich.
Yes.
What would be the harm, or what would be the responsibility or the difficulty in trying to put in an outside grease trap right now, other than, I understand it would dig up their building?
Well, again, the question that I don't have an answer to is if there's a sewer line in the back of the building in which they could tie to, or an internal one that then goes out somewhere. The issue of going in and out is something that's been done a half a dozen or more times, okay? And to install a 1,000-gallon tank, whatever term you want to give it, on the outside of the building, okay? And allow it to, basically, the plumbing goes out through it, goes through the trap, comes back into the building, and goes back basically through that line, okay? That's been done dozens of times under this regulation, okay? And bottom line is, I don't want to be the skeptic, but I've had 37 plus years to be a skeptic, and the bottom line is that I can have a grease trap in the ground, and I can surcharge it with more than the gallons that it's supposed to handle, and it will remove a good percentage of the material that it's supposed to be catching and trapping so that you can remove it, and it just flushes it right down the line, okay? When you have a 1,000-gallon grease trap outside that's basically filled with what I call ground temperature cool water, you can't pump enough water down through it, okay, to stir it up and flush it out. And as I said, I also disagree with the fact that it was pretty clear what was in play between the Board of Health and the sewer department when this regulation was put in play of what it was going to be and what the minimums were. What they wrote somewhere, the answer is I don't know, but I was there and there's no question and clarity about what it was.
Mm-hmm. All right, but that was also done in 1980.
Can I talk to this about he's saying about the line that goes out the front of the building? I want to reiterate, the line does not go out the front of the building. It goes into the middle units and they all join into one and come out. So that'd be raw sewage going into a tank that is going to be contaminated and nobody's going to pump. That's for
No,
starters.
no,
And
no, 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 no. You basically take the line of the kitchen floor.
Richard, I know what has to be done. The line that does not come out the front of that building. It comes
I don't
out,
care whether it goes out. If it goes out the back, it doesn't matter.
no, it goes out the side
It doesn't
and then the
go
front.
back
So
either.
The issue is you can take the flow that's in that kitchen and send it out and then bring it right back and tie it into that line.
But in
Period.
order to do so, excuse me, in order to do so, we would have to jackhammer the entire restaurant from the front
No,
all the way
no.
to the back.
No,
Rick
Yeah, Richard, yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? I don't want to get in a long debate about this. I think where Dr. Meikle and Anne Marie were going was a temporary accommodation, and that we could explore the things that you're talking about, Richard, and what Jeff's talking about, and come up with some solutions that would be acceptable to the board. And at the same time, I agree with Anne Marie's idea that it should be eventually looked at. And this may be a blessing that this came up, because it'll give you a chance to look at it. But the more important question here is, it's the immediate issue for these folks. And it doesn't sound like it's creating an immediate problem or harm to anybody. And we're giving you assurances and then some of how to meet your requirements of maintenance and control of it. So on an interim basis, I think two of the members were in the right direction on this. And we're willing to try to address Richard's concerns, but we could do that over time without prejudicing and making things happen that may not even need to happen. We don't know. We're told it may not even need to happen, but we'll explore that. I'm just asking for some interim relief for these clients.
well, as I said, my opinion, and I'm not talking about the time frame that the other two members are talking about. The final result is an exterior grease trap. That.
And that may be true.
Well, no.
I get it. I understand
No,
that. But
what I'm saying is the extension is based on the final solution is going to be that. That's the motion that I would do. And if it was for 6 months and whatever, that's all fine and dandy. But not that, oh, we'll think about it and it becomes the Board of Health issue that, we have to change and rewrite and whatever kind of thing. So, I mean, that's clearly where I'm coming from. I have no problem with the issue of extension of time because of circumstances and whatever. But the issue is the final end result, no matter how we work it out and control costs and everything else and whatever, that quote unquote.
Why do we have to jump to the end result? I don't understand the rush to judgment.
Well, because
we're not asking to a rush to judgment.
The other alternative is that we vote no, that you have to put the exterior grease trap in and move forward.
This is not a black and white, Richard. We found gray, it sounds like.
No, it's not gray. As I said, I've looked at these same kind of scenarios for years and years and years, and there isn't a gray.
Are you familiar with this gator trap that they have, Richard, at all? Have you ever seen these?
Yes, I have.
Who else in town has one?
No one, because they've all been tying into grease traps outside.
So how are you familiar with it in town? Okay, never mind.
Don't go there, Doug. Paul?
No.
I'm trying not to.
Paul?
Yes, Anne Marie.
Paul, are we able to give them a 6-month reprieve, if you will?
Well, what I think you're able to do is to grant a variance that's limited in time. So grant a variance that lapses in 6 months or requires, it to be re-upped in 6 months, depending on, what the board wants to do at that time. And you can make it a conditional variance that requires inspections, and that would allow you to have more information at your disposal 6 months from now. And if the board at that time determines that it's not comfortable with continuing the variance would lapse and they'd have to bring it into compliance. If the board is comfortable with allowing it to continue at that point, you could vote to extend it either for another, defined period of time or indefinitely, whatever you determine at that time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, do you want to make a motion?
Well, I want to just say, and I want this clear to Doug and to Phyllis and to the owner of this company. Richard Day is correct. This would be a 6-month conditional variance requiring you to install the outside grease tank prior to the expiration of that 6 months or any extension that you might get. So this is not a waiver or a complete variance of your requirement to comply with the current regulation. In 6 months, unless this pandemic lets up, we will not have rewritten that regulation. So Doug, I want to be clear about it. I want to help everybody out here, but this is just a 6 months reprieve if we vote this way. So Eric, do you want to do a motion?
Yeah, I was going to say that I would go do a motion for variance for 6 month period of time. At that point, we consider if there's a re-up. If that, you know, our expectation is that this would be brought up or would meet the code in that time. If at some point we re-examine after the pandemic the regulation, that's not a guarantee that we're going to determine that to get rid of the current regulation or
No.
to make it substantially different. So that it doesn't mean that if we re-examine it that we're getting rid of outdoor grease traps. You know, it's a possibility, but we really need to sort of like look into this and think about it and do it right. So for a motion, I'd say that a 6 month variation.
Eric, can I stop you for 1 second, Eric? So my question is just, you know, from my perspective, based on what was just discussed, is if the conditional variance was given, would it be given on the condition that at the end of a 6 month period, and we choose a date, that the exterior grease trap has to be installed by that date? In the meantime, the interior grease trap is pumped monthly with those reports submitted to the health department. That's basically my understanding. They would have 6 months. So does that mean that the restaurant would still have to close down for a period of time to install an exterior grease trap at some point? So it's either a delayed opening now or shut down before the end of the 6 months in order to come in compliance with this conditional variance.
I would say yes, unless if we could reconsider regulations, but I don't know that reconsidering regulations means that we're going to change that.
Right.
And I don't think that we're going to be pushing to reconsider the regulations during a pandemic because there's a number of other things we need to take care of.
One point I would make is that if 6 months from now, they choose to request either a new variance or an extension of the existing variance, I don't think you can foreclose them from making that request at this time.
That's right.
So that is an option that they would have. That doesn't mean that you have to consider it, that you have to grant it at that time.
That's right.
But I do think that you can't prohibit it at this.
Understood.
Understood.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, so we're talking about a variance that will allow them to open now. We're talking that this will be for 6 months, that it is conditional, that they will have a pump monthly and have those reports given to the Board of Health.
Eric, just for this, they made some specific proposal on who was going to pump it and how they were going to pump it. Is that correct, Doug?
Yes.
I think it's
Right. So I think we should require compliance with this proposal that they've made. Who's going to be doing the pumping? I'm trying to find it here, or the testing.
It's Action King. Action King, once a month, and if it's on an emergency basis, they're available. You can condition it as that as well.
I did see that. So, so inspection, is it pumping that they're doing, Doug? Or inspecting?
Pumping.
Pumping.
Okay.
Pumping
So,
and inspecting so they can see.
It's
Pumping
actually
inspect
both.
into
They're gonna measure it and withdraw remove it.
all right, so Eric, I think we want to say that Action King's monthly inspection and pumping with reports provided to the Board of Health.
Okay,
Can they have a person?
so variance 6 months, conditional on having Action King pump it monthly and give us the reports from each of those. At the end of the 6 months, that our expectation is that the unit will be in compliance with the regulations as they are written at that time. And there's no guarantee in this that we're necessarily going to change. If we have time to consider, then we will look into them in depth to make sure that this, we maintain public health, but we won't be don't expect to be doing that until the pandemic is over.
Okay,
I
but
think that the board should make some findings with its determination regarding the uniqueness of this particular application, with regards to the process that you've already discussed, plus as it regards to the type of use that's going on here. I know the applicant has provided information indicating that this would likely have less of a grease load than the average similar type use. I do think you want to make findings that recognize that so that you can differentiate this from another potential application that may be looking for a variance simply because they just don't want to comply.
So you're saying in terms of precedent to make sure that we say why we're giving this variance and we might not for another person.
Correct.
If I may suggest that for the reasons stated in the submittal of November 18th, 2020, and the materials provided for the board's review for this specific application, as for your motion, for your language.
And rather.
well, I
put
mean,
something
my problem is I personally don't adopt everything that's in this November 18th letter that we got from Doug. All right, so just saying, using that to support why we did it, I'm not sure that that's where I want to go with this.
Do you want to pull out the fact that there is no grill and there is no
I think that the findings of the facts, and Paul, help me if you can here, I think the first finding of the fact is that there was no outside grease trap where there should have been an outside grease trap.
And where it was presumed on the
Presumed to be. Right.
Correct. So,
I think that's where you start with this. All right. I think the second finding here is that, we're in a pandemic and we can't change our regulations. We don't have the capacity to, nor am I sure that we ever will do that. But that also makes it more important that we encourage these businesses to be able to open. Mm-hmm. As this Doug's letter does say, they're employing people. They help them with the economy. So I agree with that. I cannot say we have a finding of facts that they've provided a suitable alternative, because Richard is saying that it's not a suitable alternative. Richard believes that it is not a suitable alternative to the outside grease trap. Is that right, Richard?
Yes.
I think that we can say that. I guess we can make a finding that the sewer department, I believe Dave spoke for them, the sewer department is satisfied with what they're proposing. Well, you don't like it, Richard, but, if they're satisfied, or that it satisfies the sewer department's regulation.
Well, never mind.
again, ultimately, the result of this is going to be essentially the extension, Richard, that you had spoken about previously. But it just has to be done through the process of the grant of a conditional variance.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, 6 months from now, you guys will take a look at this and either change your mind and say, you know what, the way it is now is fine, or you'll stick with what you consider right now and say, no, we want you to install that grease trap. And if you don't, you're not in compliance and we'll have to shut you down.
I think the only reason that we would say that you don't have to install a grease trap is if we change the regulation. That's something that takes a lot of consideration. And I will say one thing is that for the 3 board members, we each kind of wear different hats, so that we each have a different area of expertise. And so Richard's our expert in terms of understanding these things. So that I think what Anne Marie and I are saying is that we are deferring to his expertise.
Sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
And just to be clear, so that we're all on the same page as well, if the board does vote for a conditional variance, then the health department will only issue a permit to open for that 6 months. For as long as the variance is in place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, we're at the point now to wordsmith this.
I'm working on it.
I need a little comic interlude while you write.
So our findings of fact. Fact number 1, no outside grease trap as expected, but no evidence that there was a permit issued to remove that grease trap. The pandemic creating a hardship on everyone, this being the time when we want to encourage businesses to employ people. That the sewer department, through David Silver, has indicated that what they're proposing satisfies their regulation, even though we are not accepting it in satisfaction of our regulation. And acknowledgement that our regulation is 40 years old, and that we may wish to review it to see if these new options are equal, although Richard states they are not equal. A recognition that these people are ready to open, and I'm really hard pressed to understand how they got this far ignoring this issue. So Doug, maybe you can speak to that.
I don't want to get in. I don't want to do that right now, Anne Marie. The finger pointing does nobody any good. So let's not. I think we're on the right track.
I'm not trying to point a finger. I'm trying to find out where things broke down. I mean, I understand where they broke down in August, but in August, why did they proceed without outside? Why are we now talking about it now?
Because everybody believed that there was still one outside.
I have a stamp.
There's a stamp plan in the town records that says so. Everybody presumed it that way, and everybody proceeded in good faith on that basis, thinking it existed.
Okay, and when did we find out it didn't exist?
About a week ago?
2 weeks ago.
Week and a half ago?
Okay, so a week and a half ago is when you went looking for the outside grease trap.
That was when somebody asked the question of getting this in. I believe the plans that were initially reviewed and circulated through town hall shows the interior trap, and a permit was issued for that.
Doug, who are you talking to?
What do you mean?
I can hear somebody talking to you, but I don't see anything.
No, that's Jeff in the back. I'm answering your question. I still think we're on the right track here, and I think that's the approach that we should be going. And we'll explore exactly more of what happened with breakdowns, but right now I don't think it's going to help us.
So I'm trying to do my findings of facts here. So they understood they needed to connect to the outside grease trap, but they proceeded thinking that there was one there.
Yes.
Okay.
And on top of it, plans were submitted to the town to get the initial permit to do the work, and it only showed an interior, and that was signed off.
That was signed off because at that time, as I explained earlier, Michelle was not aware of the
I got-
exterior grease trap.
That's right. I agree with, I understand that. This, again, no pointing fingers. That's not
Can
the
I,
goal.
can
The
I,
goal is
can
what
I just
happened.
ask a question though, just for my own knowledge moving forward? When someone is opening a business like this, logically, you don't wait until the day you're looking for a health department permit to open to dig up and look for an exterior grease trap to tie in.
Supposed to be already tied in.
It's supposedly already tied in. Again, I don't want to get into that conversation right now because I don't think it's going to be helpful to the process at the current moment.
All right, so I want to add to my findings of fact that the applicant proceeded in good faith with an expectation that the outdoor grease trap was there, and that plans had been submitted and signed off. Paul, is that sufficient? Would you recommend anything else?
In terms of the findings,
Yeah.
I would also have the finding with regards to the type of food that is going to be served here and the fact that it is claimed to have a lesser grease load than a typical restaurant would have. I think that certainly if another restaurant, if a McDonald's were to come in that's going to have a much higher grease load, you might not really have the same willingness to consider a variance. So I would like to have that finding in the record.
Okay, so we'll add that as a finding here.
So
Just
can I
specify.
interject real quick? This in the food service world is a full service kitchen. That's a given. Sometimes you don't, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have fry or anything like that. The products that are on their menu are fat products and they go through the system. So bananas, you've got salad dressings. They're all containing oil and fats. So that's why the internal grease trap is necessary. And it's stated in the food code. The outdoor grease trap, is a secondary to protect the sewer lines. But this is what we call a full service restaurant.
All right, I'm just writing here. Doug, Tropical Smoothies, is that the name of the owner or that just the trade name? Who's the applicant?
The applicant is Kesey Family Limited Partnership.
Okay. Aren't they the landlord?
Excuse me?
Aren't they the landlord?
That's the landlord. I think they have to be the applicant here.
Is that correct, Sue?
We would be giving the variance to the business, not to the landlord.
Right.
That's fine.
So I'm asking who the business is then.
Ask her because she's got an actual business name.
There's a business name that Irvi should have. I don't know if she's still on the screen or capable
Yes,
of speaking.
It's Nub Cafe Inc. That's a business name, and doing business as Tropical Smoothie Cafe.
Nub, N-U-B?
NAV.
Okay, a cafe?
Inc. INC.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's try this, okay? Eric, the motion would be to grant to Nub Cafe Inc., doing business as Tropical Smoothies, a conditional variance from the provisions of Chapter 201, Section 40 of the Town of Chelmsford Health Regulations for a period of 6 months from the date hereof. The applicant to comply with Chapter 201, Section 40 of the Town of Chelmsford Health Regulations by the end of such 6-month period. That should be Section A, 40A. During such 6-month period, Action King shall pump and inspect monthly the facility and provide timely reports to the Board of Health. And what I want to recommend, and we haven't talked about it, gentlemen, is I just want to recommend that this variance is personal to Nub Cafe Inc. If Nub Cafe Inc. sells, this variance does not follow. Paul, is that possible?
Of course it is, yes.
Okay.
You can have that as a condition.
Any other condition, gentlemen?
No?
No.
Donna, did you get that all?
I did. We're good.
I know, you're good.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to let you know it's a Tropical Smoothie Cafe.
Okay, doing business as Tropical Smoothie Cafe.
Yes, thank you.
It's not plural smoothies.
No, it's tropical. I don't know if you can upside
Sorry,
down.
I can see it. I got it.
Thank you.
Good vision.
Thank you.
No worries.
That's the easiest thing to do. All right, so we need a motion. Eric,
Oh,
do you want me to make it? I guess I'll make it because I wrote it.
Rich, second it?
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, Doug, thank you.
Have a good night. Be safe, please.
Be healthy and beware, the numbers are going up for COVID.
You are always a joy to hear.
The
Take
kids are
care.
getting
Thanks,
busy.
everyone. Good
Thank
night.
you, Paul.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
you.
it.
All right.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Well, I have to say that our next meeting's on December 7th. That'd be the right typical 6:15 time frame, and the room is to be determined. Are we going to get a room upstairs, or is that going to be postponed another month?
Postponed till January, yeah.
Okay, so this will most likely be a Zoom meeting, but we'll figure it out then. Okay?
All right.
Well, may we all be here.
Yes, there it is. There it is.
And Sue, I need to still find the governor's regulations for today. So you want to talk about it tomorrow morning sometime?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know if I'll work out, but maybe I'll call you sometime before noon when I go in the
Okay.
office. Okay. Okay.
Thank
Good
you,
to see
everyone.
everybody.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
So.
You too. Stay
Bye-bye.
healthy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.